What's up, Buttercup? Welcome back to my channel. Today's book review is the classic horror novel, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I have the typical penguin cover, but I think it's nice. I don't know, I'm sure some people, it's kind of shiny, sorry. I'm sure some people are like, oh, it could have been better. You know, this does give it a vibe. It does. It gives like a classic horror vibe because of the creepy mansion, which is the whole point, right? I also got this on sale for like $10, so that's a great deal. I was actually introduced to the Netflix series, which is not particularly like the book. So if you haven't read or watched this story, I would read the book first and then watch the limited series on Netflix. I did the opposite, and at first I was a little confused, and then I was like, oh wait, Mike Flanagan is doing his own thing with the characters from the past, not these characters. But let's get into the review, and first a little summary so we know where we're at. This book was a great start to fall and spooky season, as you can see on my hat. I am a spooky babe for this novel. I am glad that I read it this year. I was planning to either push it later or read it earlier, I don't know. I think this is just a great time in September. It's the start of spooky season, and we have come in swinging with The Haunting of Hill House. I gave this book 4 stars, like the other Shirley Jackson stories I have read, and I think a lot of it is just her type of writing style that sometimes can be hard to connect with, but this is from like the 60s, so I give leeway, but like I can't 100% give leeway, me personally. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with the writing and then I have to reread. I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into the review, like I was doing, but I need to hold back. I'm just gonna do a summary like I promised. So we follow 4 characters who decide to stay at Hill House, a very haunted and basically sentient house in the middle of nowhere. Luke is the future heir of the land and the mansion. Theodora is a bohemian assistant. Dr. Montague is the occult scholar who's running this trip. Try and find proof about that Hill House being haunted. And Eleanor, a friendless, odd, fragile young woman well acquainted with poltergeists. At first, everything seems to be okay, just a little bit spooky, until Hill House decides to focus in on one person in particular, and it wakes up. Why the book wasn't 5 stars is it was hard to distinguish between Eleanor and Theodora, which isn't great, and I know Shirley Jackson can write amazing characters that are distinct from one another, so that's a bit weird to me that those 2 characters were so alike. I had to reread parts. They do become more on their own after a certain point of the book, which I won't mention because that's spoilers, but that's way later in the novel, and the novel is less than 300 pages. I'm wondering if Shirley Jackson did that on purpose because maybe the house was trying to choose between Eleanor and Theodora to latch onto, and so because they're so similar, at least in the beginning, at least in the way they act and are written out, maybe the house was trying to figure it out, and that's why they were really honed in on. More so Eleanor, because we follow her more than Theodora, but like Theodora kind of, maybe consciously, unconsciously, I don't know, attaches herself to Eleanor, and they hang out a lot, and so do Luke and the doctor, so they're all hanging out, and they can't really leave one another alone for too long, or else the house does spooky stuff, right? But I don't know why they were written so similarly. I don't understand, because the other book and the other short story that I read of Shirley Jackson, the characters are very distinct. I did not have to reread sections, so that's why I said the writing is not as clear as other books that I've read of Shirley Jackson. Though I've kind of, sorta, gotten used to and appreciate Shirley's writing style, though I know it can be a bit much for some people and sometimes for myself. Though, you know, the other book, which is We Have Always Lived in the Castle, and the short story, The Lottery, that was pretty straightforward. For the novel, I had to reread because Mary Cat is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and we all know that, and so that is a weird flow of consciousness that I'm not like a huge fan of anyone doing. So I did give leeway. I gave leeway. Yes, I gave leeway to Shirley Jackson because I'm sure in the, was that the 50s, 60s? She came before all the other people that I have read Stream of Consciousness, and it didn't work out. And I think that worked for that time period for Mary Cat in that novel. There's a little bit of Stream of Consciousness with Eleanor, but it's connected to the haunting, and so I won't say much on that. That made sense. I appreciated that. And it wasn't as bad as Mary Cat. What Shirley does very well is suspense. Spooky suspense, as I should say. I was holding my breath in for at least half of this novel, and it's a very quick, smart, tense read. Very spooky and macabre. It's also psychological, which gets me more than like demons and ghosts and all that stuff. The psychological messes me up. And this is a sentient house, and it's playing games mentally and emotionally with people, and that's creepy. That's messed up. I think it will get you feeling weird, especially if you're reading at night, if not outright creeped out, and no wonder why it's a classic horror novel. It's a must-read for horror fans because it sets up the base for scary haunted house stories and the domestic horror and thriller subgenres. It will get you mentally and emotionally, which is a feat in and of itself, I do say so myself. With reading so many horror, thriller, suspense, mystery novels, I am not creeped out, but this was creepy. And it's how she sets up the house and the characters and the writing. Yes, I did have a problem with Eleanor, though I think that's kind of the point in a way. Could it have been better written out with Eleanor as her own just odd person and Theodora as like bohemian assistant? She kind of feels bad for Eleanor, so she like kind of watches out for her. I think that would have been better. My idea that House focuses on the two women, so maybe there was a point to writing them in a similar way because they're nice and innocent and they're kind, maybe naive. But Theodora is more learned and in a way more social. She can socialize with people. Eleanor cannot. So I think there is a point, but I'm not sure that that really hits the mark, unfortunately, with the differentiating between Eleanor and Theodora. Luke and the Doctor were completely separate characters. They were fully fleshed out, so maybe there's something there that I'm missing, but that's why I gave it 4 stars and not 5. However, I obviously recommend this book. Maybe you have a different idea on why Theodora and Eleanor sound basically the same for most of this novel. Leave your thoughts below on that, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you, and have a spooky, scary skeleton season. Bye.